Zach Albert, NASCAR.com. Justin, what's the vibe coming into this place? I mean, not only for the race, but just the kind of build up for almost like a festival atmosphere. Did you feel that last year, and are excited for that again this year?
Yeah, I think the most disappointing part about last year was kind of the huge build up that we had, and all the keys were in place, and then the rain kind of stopped all of it, right? So I think, from a team aspect, from a driver aspect, and then selfishly as an Illinois native, right, the vibe is still really, really good. It is very different this year. I think that there was a lot of uncertainty last year amongst fans, amongst teams. And I feel like a lot of those questions were answered pretty quickly, throughout the course of the weekend last year. I was super bummed at how everything ended, but I'm excited to get back up here. Beautiful weather, all the right things that I wish we would have had last year. And I'm a little bit fearful that last year's rain hurt us in some ways, that I don't know that some of the people that came last year will come back. But then again, on the other side of it, I've seen a lot of interest from people that went home, told their friends and their family about how great the event was last year, and they're coming back this year. Furthermore, I don't think any music got played last year, correct? If I'm wrong, I think all the music was canceled. So, hopefully we can have more of the festivities and more of things going on around the park this year, and just make it what it needed to be last year. But the infrastructure, all of that. It's just wild I drove in this year. Last year I flew in and rode in a bus. This year I drove up from back at home in Springfield, and it is so different of an experience driving up here than it was to ride in a bus up here last year. So, I'm excited to get on the track and see what it looks like. And we've had a year to age the surface. Lots has changed since we were here last year. So I'm excited to see what it drives like and what it's like in the dry. Because I don't really feel like we ever got a chance to really feel like what it was like in the dry.
Jerry Jordan, KickingTheTires.net. Okay, so I was going to ask you, you drove up here. So have you noticed, 7-Eleven has merch for the street race. Have you noticed the signage and the, going even further out from the city? Have you seen that? Did you see that coming in? And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I got to come up here, Sunday of last week and throw the first pitch at the White Sox game. And it was really cool because I saw lots of racing gear even that day. And then obviously the co-brand stuff between, I think Michael's car there was a T-shirt for Michael, but then there was also just White Sox Racing. I have a really cool White Sox Racing hat. As a Cardinals fan, it was a little weird wearing White Sox gear, but at the same time, it was so exciting to see kind of that crossover, right? I don't feel like we see that a lot. But then even just like you mentioned, the city, the state, really. The advertisements and what, trying to drive people up here. There's a lot of people within the city limits, right? So it's not like you need to add a whole lot of people to come out. But at the same time, I do feel like this race it's a spectacle. It's the only street circuit on our schedule. It's the first one ever on our schedule. And it is so different. I listened to some of the fans that came last year and are coming back this year. And it's interesting because a lot of them last year were road racing fans. And I feel like this year we've got a more mixture of both. And the general consensus is that it's not like road racing and it's not like oval racing. It's very different. And so it's kind of appeasing to different crowds. And I think that's what this event was supposed to be about. And it's been really neat to see the kind of the fanfare around it. It's exciting to see companies get involved and be a part of a sport that obviously we do every week and we love it. And we're used to seeing that kind of merch. But when you see a city kind of adapt to that or other brands that aren't necessarily in the sport, it's a big deal.
Samuel Stubbs, yardbarker.com. You're a veteran. You've been around a long time. You mentioned it was cool to see a lot of the fanfare around this race. But when you've raced as long as you have, where does this race, in terms of the event, the spectacle, rank among some other, novelty races and novelty events that NASCAR has done and gone to?
I've been lucky enough to be coming to NASCAR races since the late 80s and seen a lot. Some good, some bad, right? And one of the things that I think is very unique about this one is we have a lot of racetracks. Nashville's a great example, right? So Nashville last weekend is called Nashville Super Speedway, but it's 40 minutes from downtown Nashville, right? We have a lot of racetracks that are like that. They're built in kind of the outskirts. Things grow up around them, but really, truly, they're kind of built, Chicagoland Speedway's in Joliet. I probably passed Joliet 2 hours before I got here because of traffic, right? That being said, one of the things that I think last year that was so cool for me is I've come to Chicago my whole life, school trips, whatever, it was the trip to kind of come up and see the big city. When you see people literally standing on statues to get a view of the racetrack, like that from a driver's standpoint is kind of a surreal like thought process, right? We get so caught up in the day-to-day of what we do. We're here to compete. We come in, we're here for a couple of days and we're out. Like it's our job, right? And then when you watch people get it so excited for us to come to town and to do what they did last year, like this one definitely ranks, I would say, it definitely ranks in the top 10 of kind of the races that I've been a part of and kind of the fanfare of the races. The only negative I would say last year was the weather, and ending early and not getting to really complete the event. So if I had one complaint about last year, it was just that, right? And that's not our fault unless anybody's got a hotline to Mother Nature and we could have solved last year. I think for me that was the only negative to it. But it definitely ranks in the top 10, and I'm hopeful that this weekend can rank it even higher when we have a dry weekend for the whole weekend.
Jake Cohen, Associated Press. How does, everybody got a chance to see this course last year, but it was a wet course for most of the weekend. How does the fact that it might be dry for most of the weekend affect like your knowledge base compared to like last year when you ran on the wet tires and the wet and all that stuff?
Well, two things. Number one, it is going to be dry, right? So we didn't really have any dry. I mean, we were on slicks at certain points, but I still don't feel like the track was ever dry, right? It was always damp. Second of all, though, when we came here last year, 50% of the racetrack had been at least fixed or patched. Maybe not necessarily new asphalt, like long strips of it, but, you had a lot of patches, you had a lot of things. This year, you've got a year on all of that, right? So all those areas last year that had really good grip, they've got a year of Chicago weather. And any of you that have been in Chicago in the winter, it's not pretty. So, you got city buses that sit there. You've got traffic all over. I mean, that's the one thing that's crazy to me about a street race is you have the elements of not only the weather, but you have the elements of traffic, foot traffic, debris, garbage, probably a few cars that leak a little bit of oil or gas, right? Fender benders, there's plastic and all that stuff. They do a great job of cleaning the surface, but like those are all elements that are down on the surface that aren't common to a traditional race course. So not only are we going to have to learn the dry weather and learn how to find the limit, but you're also going to have to deal with, kind of what's different about the racetrack than we saw last year, just as a surface. And I think that's going to be really, really wild. Oh, and by the way, there's no rubber down, so we're going to have to lay rubber down for the first 30 minutes of practice, and it's going to be ever evolving. Cup Series practice is going to lay a lot more rubber down. So this race is going to be one of those you're never going to be satisfied that you have all the knowledge until you walk out of here at the end of the race, and you still might not feel that way.